It is often said that the moment an election is done and dusted, especially in Africa, another begins. And that is why, even though this is 2021, there seem to be some kind of incursions and movements in Nigeria towards 2023, and that's when the country will be witnessing the next general election. How this will play out, especially in the area of security, the economy, and some of those dynamics that will actually, be the defining factor of what we'll be looking at today on The Square. Welcome, I'm Sulaiman. Nigeria, we have its seventh general elections since returning to democratic rule in 1999. It's been 22 years of mixed emotions about what democracy means to that country. Now, millions of Nigerians are yet to enjoy the true dividends of democracy as successive governments keep struggling with convincing, many Nigerians. As we move across generations, desires keep changing, and the hope for a better Nigeria is probably on a cliffhanger. More questions are being asked, and many more people are being tasked to be a part of the Nigerian dream. Until now, 3 of Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones are yet to produce a president. Well, that's a fact. Citizens are hardly concerned with where, but are worried about who becomes their leader and the man or woman to change the nation for good. Now, Olusegun Obasanjo, Umar Musa Yar'Adua, Goodluck Jonathan, and of course Muhammadu Buhari, they've all had, their own share of being president. The race for the 5th has begun in earnest, and the games and the politics are in full swing. The scorecards are being measured, and the meetings, Nigerians hope, will yield something positive, progressive, and purposeful. 1 in 5 African is a Nigerian, and what happens in the continent's most populous nation and arguably its biggest economy concerns every African. That's our focus today on The Square. Joining me today to unpack the riddles, the puzzles, and stories behind the scenes are 3 passionate Nigerians. Now, MUIZ BANIRE is a senior advocate of Nigeria and a one-time legal officer for the ruling All Progressives Congress. EZEKIEL, Director General, Nigeria First Project, and pretty much later, SHOWUNMI is a political analyst, will be joining me. Welcome to the show. Let me start with you, EZEKIEL. It's good to see you again, and of course, good to see you, MUIZ BANIRE. Let's start with you, EZEKIEL. 2023, but we're in 2021. How is it that almost everyone is already looking at that year?
Yeah, actually, doing things properly, 2023 should have started on the very first day after we finished 2019. The reason is that the process of electing whom we should entrust our common patrimony to manage is a process that should be extremely rigorous. It's not something that should just come up like that. So 2023 should have started the first day after swearing in 2019. But we have not learned to draw a line between governance and politics. Politics is so, preoccupation of parties, while governance is the sole preoccupation of elected officers. We have made the very terrible mistake of bringing the two and trying to put them together. And that's where we're having the problems that we have. The moment you have been elected, you are entrusted with the common patrimony of everybody within your constituency. So you cease to be partisan because you are now managing the money of, say, APC, PDP, ADC, all the parties. You are managing their money. So you become one for all and one for none. Now, as you go through that, your political parties start from that day to see to what extent they can make sure that you perform so well that when they go back to the next polls, they'll have little problems. On the contrary, those that are out of power, they start that day to do a profiling of situations, feeling the pulse of the people, jigging, going through rejigging their processes that made them to lose out. So they start from day one to plan for the next election, while those who have been elected kind of move out of party structure and now enter governance structure. The moment we're able to draw these two lines, then we'll discover that 2023 for parties today is so late. And then Nigerians are the third leg of this tripod. Nigerians are, on one hand, examining the integrity of the people they put in power, and after a while, they now start to think in terms of where they've gotten it right or gotten it wrong and which direction they should look. So Nigerians should be looking at what games the political parties are playing. So I think that 2023, we're already 2 years behind 2023.
Let me bring in MUIZ BANIRE here. Quite a great perspective there, Ezekiel. MUIZ, we've seen you over time. Africans are amazed that, some of the key things raised by Ezekiel there. He said something about speaking, in a nationalistic manner, not being partisan. That has been some of the key things people have noticed about you. But before we dig in deep, let's ask, are you still a member of the ruling APC?
Certainly, I'm not a member since July 2018. I left since 2018, July.
So you're a better person for us to look at some of these things we're looking at now, because you've been there and you have also been in government. Is it too early in the day for Nigeria to be talking about 2023 at the moment, looking at the potpourri of issues the country is dealing with at the moment?
Well, it depends on your perspective of it. One perspective is the one ETOK given, is to say that, of course, within the political structure, if you look at it technically, that we have political parties that endorse. These parties, of course, they must at all times be busy themselves doing something, meaning that immediately after the last election, they are back to the drawing board, preparing against the next election. In that context, it might not be too early. But if you look at it from the governance perspective, the usual belief, and which is the right thing in most cases, is to allow some time some measure of governance in terms of time duration before you embark on political activities again. In other words, so as not to derail governance, you allow those who have been elected to concentrate, because there's no way you can divorce them from politics. That's the reality. Once politics start, they get distracted equally. So you need to give them time. So in most instances, the tendency and the unspoken words or agreement among the politicians is to live at least at the BRS minimum 2 clear years. Ideally, it's 3 years. It's the last year that is usually devoted to political activities. So if you look at it from that context, then you will agree, you will say that it's too early. If anything, it should start anytime from maybe next month at the earliest time. And of course, for me, it's something that is neither here nor there, but I want to see it from those two perspectives, that if you are looking at it from major political activity in terms of election and those issues, then it's too early. But if you are looking at it from the political party's perspective, of course, it's their normal business. After one election, they start preparing for the next one. And that is how it must be, in my perspective.
Well, I think you've given us more than one to chew. I'll come back to you so that we can start talking about some of those things that Nigerians should be looking at the moment. So, Ezekiel, back to you. Do you think, at the moment, listening to MUIZ, that Nigerians are ready for any of those, analysis he's given, whether as a political party, the time frame for you to kickstart for the next election, or whether as those in government? So let's start talking about those key issues that should define 2023 for Nigeria. I saw some of those things that you had written, an open letter which you wrote. Tell us what informed that open letter to the electoral body.
The very first thing is that we need to come to terms with the fact that governance is an extremely important. In fact, I always tell people that after God, the next most important institution is government. Government is so important that it can impoverish the people or it can give life to the people. And in our constitution, it's clearly written, chapter 2, section 14, subsection 2b, states without any ambiguity, gives the marching order for government and governance. It says that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Look at two words, shall and primary. Now, within that context, the only process that brings you into government is politics, politicking, party. And the person that is the umpire that superintends this process is INEC. And having been a player on 2 occasions, I've contested the governorship of my state on 2 occasions. I've come to really realize where the problems are. And no matter how much the umpire plays, if certain basics are not resolved, it becomes absolutely impossible for us to have free, fair, credible elections, which is what inspires people to come who are good enough, because they know that the process is going to throw up the best. So long as that process does not guarantee the throwing up of the best don't have to waste their time, their resources, or their money, no matter how good they are. So having taken part on 2 occasions, I realized the very fundamental flaws, and the very first thing I needed to do as a patriotic citizen was to send a very comprehensive letter to the chairman of INEC, telling him some of the things which probably we'll discuss as the processes go on. For instance, how do we put in place a structure that ensures that the man who earns 250,000 and is able to be made a certain umpire that is strategic, and that man is bribed with, say, 25 million for him to alter the figures? How do we make sure that, number one, within the processes, he cannot alter the figures? Number two, if the processes give him that leeway, he knows there's something that's a bigger deterrent that stops him from altering the processes. So these are the things that we looked at, and we're talking in terms of what are the consequences of electoral malpractices, not only by the politicians, but by the umpire. That's number one. Number two, how can we get the parties to be so enlightened that they understand what the essence of party is all about? These are the things, the imperatives. I believe that as we talk more, we'll be able to go
absolutely. I'll come back to you. Let me come to MUIZ BANIRE. Just recently, there was this trending conversation you had, of course, with News Central, and it has to do with, possibility of Nigerian having a very young president. Perhaps I'd like you to expatiate more on that. What made you think that Nigeria should be thinking of a ceiling in terms of age to getting quite a younger person to come on the saddle in 2023?
Well, there are too many issues that attest to that reality. I've been in government before, and I know at what age I was in government and what I was able to accomplish during that period. I can tell you for free that it can be done now at this my age. That's from the personal perspective of it. The second aspect of it is that I can see, and knowing the magnitude of what is required in the art of governing this country, you need tremendous level of energy. In other words, you must be well and healthy enough to be able to cope with the demands of office. It's not about sitting in the office and just signing a file or presiding over a meeting in Absoro. One of the don'ts, or one of the, if you like, call it one of the challenges that we're having with the present head, is the ability to move around all the time, to see what's going on all around, be able to perceive correctly what is happening in the country. So we certainly need a very energetic person to take over the mantle of leadership. And this why age is a factor. I tell people are quick to point out to me to say in America, you have people of 79, 70, and I tell them that, is it the same manner we use our life in Africa, or particularly in Nigeria, that they use their life there? I can tell you without fear of tradition that in America, people seem to live their life truly arithmetically, whereas here to certain extent we live our life geometrically. In other words, when you see a 40-year-old Nigerian, then you are looking at a man who has lived his life in a manner that is actual reflection will be about 60 to 70-year-old, compared with somebody who lived his life in the United States or United Kingdom. So that reality must continuously dawn on us. So we need somebody that is energetic, somebody that has the youthful energy, somebody with the exposition that is capable of dealing with a lot of issues that are digital. We need no more any analog human being to run the affairs of this country. The whole world is already on digital level. You need somebody that is equally digital to be able to cope with what is going on in our environment today. Otherwise, we put another analog human being, either in terms of age, exposure, or capacity, then I'm not too sure that we will not continue to progress. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to stay with you, BANIRE, before I come back to EZEKIEL, because now the young Nigerians watching you will be asking question. You've been there, and of course, you're telling us, giving us an insider perspective. In Nigeria, politically speaking, we understand that there is a clique, or as some will say in the street in Nigeria, there's a cabal. And if you look at the clique, the makeup of the clique, almost everyone has gone past the age that you have actually pegged this. How possible is it for a young Nigerian, to make an incursion and break the ceiling and come into the scene and, if possible, win an election?
Well, I'm not too sure it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's not unsurmountable. You see, the problem we have is that most of our youth are lazy. Let's start from the statistics. Statistics clearly shows that we have over 60% eligible youth voters in the country, which means that if all youth resolve, for example, to patronize themselves, they certainly will be winning virtually all seats in the country. That's number one. Number two, again, is that everything is not about money. You actually need more or less information pertaining or relating to the voters index. That is the register for you to be able to activate or to actualize any electoral ambition in that regard. And I give you a very good example of it. You find a situation where you want to contest a councillorship election. You do not need all the money that people need outside there to throw around. All you need is a personal interface with the people, which requires tremendous amount of time, I must confess, and energy. You need to go around people, campaigning to them on one-on-one. In other words, selling your personality rather than the platform. In Nigeria, I've said it consistently, we do not have political parties. What we have are political platforms. They are just platforms for contest election, finish. No ideology, no direction, clearly. So a youth that is interested in convying for any position must start early enough. And one of the first tools he must acquire is the electoral register of the area he is interested in contesting. With that armed with that kind of instrument, then you move out, either technologically or physically. You can do the combination of the two. Talking to people, espousing your ideas, your ideologies, your program, and everything. And as much as possible, we discovered that where an average godfather or any mafia will come out to spend so much as among us as maybe 100 million naira, you spend less than 5 million naira to actualize your dream. So, but it requires a lot of commitment, a lot of work to be done in that regard. And of course, there are some other few areas of challenges like thuggery, manipulation of results, like my brother earlier mentioned. All these areas too we have to address. And I'm glad that somewhere along the line, we are beginning to look at the electronic version of transmitting results, maybe election eventually. All this will help us collectively to ensure that at the end of the day, election is substantially free and fair. Once we are able to tame those monsters of thuggery and all those things, then you are able to get somewhere in the process. I think that's my thought.
I think it's lucid enough. EZEKIEL, I saw you, I caught you twice, nodding your head in affirmation to some of the points he's just raised. You have been working with young Nigerians, politically speaking, and tell us if this actually resonates with these group of people you've been making interaction with.
Okay, the young people have a lot of challenge. And we honestly cannot blame them for the challenges that they have. one of the challenges they have is that we, the adults, have given them a very wrong impression of what politics is all about. We teach them that politics is the only platform that you get in there and you are rich overnight. So to them, at the back of their mind, seeking political office is the best way for you to get the best of life. And that is so diametrically opposed to what the essence is supposed to be. Anybody seeking a public office is seeking to manage the resources of the people in the larger interest of the people. So it's a service platform. So our political, either what they see or what we do are so confusing to the young people in terms of what should be. So to that extent, I working with them, I don't talk of power transfer to the youth. I talk of responsibility transfer to the youth. And I'm having a hard time, but I'm making inroads here and there. Why am I saying that? You must come to a point where you let the young people know that government is about service and not about power. That's very, very, very important. And it's a major challenge there.
But what are the... Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Yes. Secondly, we have failed very, very woefully in creating succession platforms. Like my brother Louis said, when MUIZ, not Louis, when you get into the lowest political office, which is supposed to be the councillorship, which is a place that you don't need to spend money, but rather a place that your community, having seen you work with them, give you that trust for you to get in there to serve them. That lowest platform does not exist. It does not exist. I'll tell you this. Take any state of the federation. In Akwa Ibom State, for instance, you realize that APC has a member in the National Assembly, but that member in the National Assembly cannot get his councillor in his own ward. He can't get his councillor. And yet he's in the National Assembly. I mean, it should be taken for granted that his party is so solid on ground that they are able to get a councillor, or that they're able to get a councillor.
I was actually going to ask you, quickly before I go back to MUIZ, I was going to ask you the fear, because MUIZ said something which is very key here, and it should worry every Nigerian youth. And he said, majority of these young people seem to be lazy because they've not been able to exploit and explore some of the key things he's raised. So what's the fear of the young Nigerian that you have had conversation with?
For you to be a councillor, you have to be a loyalist of the Godfather, and has absolutely nothing to do with how good you are in the society. In fact, Mr. Patutomi, Professor Patutomi, says something that I find very profound. He said in Lagos State, he was short of calling the name. This guy used to be the T-boy of his master, the T-boy. Now he is in the House of Assembly. Why? Because offices at that level are reward platforms to loyalists. And we have to change that mentality. So the young people are at a loss as to what they should do. Should they go engaging the society, the system, their people, or should they learn how to be thugs and to be loyalists and honorable, I know your boy. It's a fear that we must confront and see how we can sanitize our system, because we don't have that progression based on proper political, understandings and dynamics.
Let me bring in MUIZ here quickly. MUIZ BANIRE, there are key things that people should be worried about now. The good thing is that yourself and EZEKIEL are speaking the minds of Nigerians, but there's another thing about moving this election in terms of zones. There's this conversation in Nigeria that almost every zone in the country has produced a president. And for Nigeria's southeast region, they say it has got to be their turn in producing the president for 2023. Looking at it politically speaking, does this hold water? And if it does, how can this be achieved?
Well, I'm not a fan of zoning. I must confess to you, I'm not a fan of it. But if it must be, then again, we must still ensure that there is a high degree of merit in the process. In other words, I'm part of those who believe that competency must govern. I don't care where you are from. Once you are a Nigerian and you are competent to run my affairs in a manner that I'll be happy with everything around me. But what is the usefulness in you bringing somebody from my village and I'm in tears throughout the Senate? It makes no sense. So for me, honestly speaking, I do not buy the idea of all this zoning, federal character, quota system. But I've always said it is part of what is making the country retrogress to where we are today. It's a contradiction, is a contradiction in time between even patriotism and these funny principles. Because I used to give a good, just a narrative of somebody who you want to be patriotic and who, for example, as far back as when he was in secondary school, scored 300 and something to access the university admission. And somebody, he couldn't get the admission with over 300 marks, and somebody with 120 getting admission, and you expect him to be patriotic. It cannot be. You have told him that he's not a Nigerian. You have told him clearly. That's what you have told him. So for me, brandishing all this, your idea, brandishing it all over the whole place, that zone, region, quota, and all this, honestly, they are retro. In fact, what has happened to us as a nation is that we don't even seem to know the origin of some of these concepts before we adopt it. Like I said to them, I said, look, this thing we adopt today as federal character quota system are all product of what used to be reverse discrimination in the United States of America. And it had a tenor. It's not something that is eternal, that it exists forever. But in Nigeria now, it has become part and parcel of us as if it will never end again. They are not right. And it's the same thing that is even afflicting us as a nation today, particularly at the leadership level. We must look for people that are competent regardless of where you are. And if you want to forge unity, you have to forge it in that manner. But right now, each person now says that when it's somebody from my zone, that is our turn. So we must do everything to corner everything. And that probably explains where we are today, even as a nation. Today, people are calling for secession, people are calling for restructuring all over the open, not because they want to call for it, but the reality is that everybody knows today that everything in terms of resources, in terms of appointment, in terms of opportunity are highly lopsided, heavily lopsided in favor of a certain section of the country. And of course, there is no way others will be jumping and clapping for the other. There will continue to be a conflict, except and until we see a true Nigerian being the head of the country. And when you have such a person, then you'll be able to administer his oath of office in the manner that in which he has taken it and live up to it and treat all of us as equals. And not because you are from a particular zone, you cannot be this, or you are from that place, you can't be this. So for me, I do not subscribe to it. But if for whatever reason, eventually it has to be taken, again, you can still ensure that the most competent are still emerging from the properties of your zoning arrangement. That is my view. Thank you.
Well, I think that's taking it almost home towards 2023, because these, Ezekiel, do you think these should actually form the basis for conversation for those, bringing themselves up for such political offices, especially those who will be going to the National Assembly? Shouldn't these, some of these key things raised by MUIZ BANIRE be some of the campaign objectives or promises told the people that, look, when we get there, these are some of the things that should be looked into, because as he did say, it shouldn't be something that is ad infinitum, never-ending kind of clause in the Constitution of Nigeria.
I'll tell you two things. The very first is that I want to know the laws of the game. I want to know. If we are speaking excellence, then I'll play with you. But if we are speaking, sharing, if it has gone to you, then it should also come to me. So the question is, what's the language that we are speaking? Unfortunately, we have been speaking sharing because, with all due respect to the leaders that we have had, you cannot, in all good conscience, that the best of us have superintended over the affairs of the rest of us. I can't say so. If I look at OBJ, with all due respect, I don't want to say that he's the most competent person. After OBJ, we had Yaradua, the late Yaradua. Nice guy, but with all due respect, he's not being the most competent person. Then after that, my brother Goodluck Jonathan came in, and I cannot tell you in all good conscience that that's one man, that's a bright star. And then, of course, the worst, in all due respect again, is our current president for 1, 2, 3 reasons. Number one, I was one of those that was against him from the beginning, and I had my reasons. I had nothing personal. I said, for a man who was head of state 30 years ago, and within the 30 years, I've not seen him address a conference, I've not seen him write a book, I've not seen him run a company, I've not seen him any of those indices that shows somebody who's been upgrading his life. And coming at a time when the then CME had said that things were going south in Nigeria, we needed to recruit, a whiz-kid of a CEO to come in and roll up the sleeves and, hit the ground running, like my brother BANIRE has just said. We didn't see that person. Rather, we saw an allocation to the north. And the southeasterner is saying, for goodness sake, if we've been doing allocations, it's gone to the south, it's gone to the north, gone to the east or to the west, let it also come to us, because we are talking in terms of allocations. But if Nigerians right now want to say we are in a dire strait and we want to get the best, I think that within the southeastern region, I would say with every good conscience that we have some some whiz-kids that can turn things around. So why can't the Igbos, my in-laws, sell us these stars that they have? This person, this person, this person. And people say, wow, he's good enough. And besides, there are people who have not heard. So why don't we also, it becomes a besides. But when we have not heard, stays in front, then I, good conscience, I say that for the umpteenth time, I will not say that Nigeria should go on by way of allocation. But let the Easterners bring out their stars, which they have, and project them within the context of capacity, capability, and character. And we will be able to sell them to the others and add that 10% sentiment factor, which will be able to tilt it in favor of them. If I see an Easterner score 90% and I saw a Northerner score 91%, I will take the Easterner who scored 90 because he's already gotten excellence above the Northerner who scores 91, because I'll say, well, it has never gone to this side, let's also give it to them. But if they bring me somebody that is 45% or 50%, and then at this dire strait from another region, they give me somebody like 75% or 85%, brother, I would think of self-preservation. I'll think of my country. I'll think of who will be able to take me to that El Dorado, and I will go with that person. So for me, competence comes first, capacity and character, excellence first, before where you come from. But where all of them are at par, I will tend to have my sympathy for those who have not had a shot at the goal.
I'd like to thank you, EZEKIEL NYA-ETOK, is the Director General Nigeria First Project. Thank you for your time. And we'll take a moment. MUIZ BANIRE is still with us, and someone else will be joining us to take this to the very end. Join us again. Well, we'll continue our conversation here on Village Square Africa, here on News Central Television. We're now being joined by SHOWUNMI SHOWUNMI, and of course, MUIZ BANIRE is still very much here, looking at Nigeria's journey towards the next election. SHOWUNMI, before you came on, my conversation with Mr. BANIRE centers around some of the key things, and he's of the opinion of younger Nigerians coming on the saddle, and he's also giving some of the key things that young Nigerians should look into doing to get in on the saddle politically. And of course, he's also said, well, he's on the basis of merit as against zoning in Nigeria. Let's start with that. Are you for zoning towards the 2023 election, or you're also on the side of Mr. BANIRE, which is on the side of competence and, of course, the best man for the job?
I have been in this political process for a while, and therefore I'm able to know what's realistic and what can work and what will be an idea that we'll continue to play with. When we say we do not want zoning, one of the problems we have is that we forget the reason why zoning was introduced in the first instance. To my mind, zoning was introduced as a mechanism to keep this country fairly united and allow every section of the nation, at least within the 6 geopolitical trapping we use, to feel a sense of belonging. But guess what? There has never been a time when the zoning has been respected in the real sense of the word. In 1999, even though people will say the PDP and the other parties took zoned it to the southwest, we are aware that quite a lot of other people also threw themselves into the ring. Same thing happened in 2003 all the way to 2019. So what am I saying? There's a culture of zoning that we know, but sometimes you are at a ground zero. And I believe that this our country has, we could literally say, when it comes to the politics and the governance, we are at ground zero. And therefore, if you're at ground zero, what kind of personalities do you need to drive the process? One of the things I must declare is that you can't stay on just zoning. You have to look at competence. You have to look at the capability. You have to x-ray those who are saying they want to lead and what they bring into the table. You have to look at the structure of the political parties and how they go about their internal mechanism of primaries and all of that. But more importantly, you have to look at who can reasonably be expected to get the job done. So for those who say they want merit, I am totally always for merit. For those who say they want zoning, I understand their thinking. But I ask a question, is there any section of this country that we couldn't find merit from? I hold the view that we have been one of the lucky nations of the world. If we really open up our minds and give ourselves a great opportunity, the quality material exists all over. And thank you for bringing Mr. BANIRE. He's one of those personalities that I don't love him. I adore him when I read him. I like his sense of reasoning. I follow him very much. And I sometimes say, oh God, how I wish BANIRE was chairman of the APC. And because of the level of things I've been seeing from him, I would just say, adios, amigos. That's the kind of man that I think can lead me. So all consider, I will say, let us be pragmatic, but let us also be reasonable enough to know that this 2023, God sparing our country, keeping it safe, is not your usual type of election cycle. The indicators in the country reflect that we are broken and divided beyond our wildest imagination. We are now at a point where the sections of the country are morphing together with a view to say they want to have a north versus west and a south. There's also the issue of poverty, unemployment, despondency. We are not doing as well as we would have wanted to do in terms of economic growth. And in terms of national cohesion and the kinds of things that make people feel, oh yes, I am happy being in my country. We're also not doing well. So I think for me, I've convinced myself that yes, I note all the issues, but I am more interested now in also looking at those personalities. Now, when you look at the zones, which are the zones in Nigeria that can legitimately cry that they've never produced president? One of the zones that would obviously say they have the right to try to be is the Southeast zone. Another zone that has not produced the presidency for such a long time is the Northeast zone. Another zone that has never had its hands on the plow, probably in a democracy, is the North Central. And when you throw all of that into the mix, you then have to ask, what about those personalities that we know can hit the ground running? And then there's also the question of, shall we younger elements constantly be cheerleaders to a group of people that have not inspired us or done very well, even with the assignment we're giving us? So I tell you, those are my opening comments. We'll begin to engage it. As you ask more questions, we'll see. I am for merit, but I also say that we can find merit anywhere we're looking for merit. And if we're going to be able to come to the table and say, look, for the welfare, for the peace, for the stability of the people, we're going to go for zoning, then albeit, let us find a good one within the zone we're going. But take note, elections are done in stages. One stage of the process is that people have to come out. Anyone who wants to be president now needs to start telling us precisely how it's going to solve some of these our problems. Because we can tell for ourselves that we're not at where we used to be. Therefore, we need to be engaging them. We need to be hearing their ideas on those issues. And we need to be asking them the critical question, how? It's not enough for us to have hot words, sweet words, telling us they'll do this, they'll do that. Because we know that on that score, my good friend and my adored revered Luis BANIRE, he joined them in asking us to go the way of the APC and President Buhari. And I'm sure he himself cannot tell me this is the proudest time he's been as a party man or even as a Nigerian. So
let me quickly comment here, because before you joined us, it was one of the questions I asked Mr. BANIRE if he's still a member of the APC, but he just told us that he's since left the APC in 2018. So I think that also explains why he's been more nationalistic in his outlook. I'll let BANIRE comment there before we bring you back again, SHOWUNMI. I think he didn't know that first you're not a member of the APC at the moment, and also he's got some kind words for you, for your personality.
Well, thank you very much, my brother SHOWUNMI, for the charitable encomiums. I must say that I follow you equally on some of your appearances, and I think that we are all on the same page. We are just bothered. I'm sure that you are not a scavenger. You are not hungry for anything. You have nothing to get from the system rather than the fact that we know that it's possible to turn around this country, because we all see it. It's something, it's not rocket science at all. So that is what governs or runs in all of us. And I do tell a lot of people, I said that when you keep a company and you realize suddenly that you are in a bad company, nothing wrong in you quickly reversing. Having said that, I think again, like I said, you see, part of the problem we have, like I pointed out hitherto, is that we seem to have this contradiction in place between patriotism and a lot of other factors. There's no way you can strengthen or build patriotism where you have a zoning arrangement that canvasses quota system, canvasses federal character and all those funny principles. That is why even they themselves, the draftsmen of our constitution, have not deemed it fit up to today. I tell you, there's nowhere in our constitution where zoning has been put as far as political offices are concerned. Similarly, even in party constitution, there is nowhere that is written. That's why you find the tension always. And you find out that in virtually all election cycles, people come out vie from different zones at the same time. And I think this is what has been going on, because there is nowhere that it is entrenched either constitutionally or otherwise legally that is binding on anyone. And by the time you start talking about the competence of these people, in fact, my own ground, my own position is even beyond all this zoning. Like I said initially, the time is right that we must, if possible, not have anybody governing us beyond the age of 60. What is the person going to do there? Because I know the kind of energy required to do this job. If you don't have that energy, no matter how brilliant you are, it's impossible to coordinate. It's a challenge. So why don't we promote, like Show-Me rightly said, too many stars, too many younger ones. In fact, at times when I run across them abroad, I just be looking at them like as if they are in special cloud. And I think these are the kind of people we need to figure out, we need to bring on board. And there must be a conscious effort to eliminate this act of godfatherism. We can tame it. We can get rid of it. It's only that it requires a lot of advocacy, particularly in terms of civic education, in terms of the defense of the vulnerables. These are the challenges that we have, and that I think the elite along the line need to rise up to this challenge. The media must rise up to this challenge. We all must combine effort towards them. Without it, we are heading nowhere. The quality of the people that are running or administering our affairs today, honestly speaking, without fear of contradiction, are mainly the worst of us. And we need to get the best of us to administer our affairs. And to do this, honestly, it requires a lot of energy, a lot of focus, a lot of activities around those issues. Thank you.
Well, I bring you, SHOWUNMI, listening to MUIZ, one key thing he's said, can a Nigerian political godfather be tamed?
I tell you what, in the build-up to 2015, when I started seeing the kind of energy, the drama, the new narrative management style, the science behind the APC, then I held my breath. I kept praying that, let them get it right. Let them get it right. Even though I was in PDP, I felt that the People's Democratic Party, my party, had come from somewhere and had achieved the much we can achieve in terms of deepening democracy. And I thought that, okay, if a new party is coming on board, haven't been also, players that are part of the place and bring up a lot of freshness, I actually really thought that it was going to become more than an ideal party. My greatest disappointment is that we have two parties now, but we do not really have anything that can give us the kind of, wow, these are leaders. But we are stuck with one major problem. You need to be able to organize people. You need to be able to find a connecting set of belief or ideology or vision that they can buy into. And then you need to be able to find people that will put a lot of energy and work behind it. And if you look at our country, we have not gotten the same level of acculturation in terms of education and what have you. Therefore, we are not going to speak the same language that will connect in the north, that will connect in the south and the other zones. Therein lies the problem of trying to step out with a new idea. Except we are able to get young people to come into those existing parties that have the structure in numbers and be willing to go the whole hog of standing there and using their numbers to overwhelm those that are there, praying that their colleagues would also shun the easy gratification of collecting money, which doesn't really make sense because the volume and the quantum they put is ridiculous. We may be philosophers who will philosophize on the process, but the reality of what will happen will hit us smack in the face because the two main parties we have in the country are quite strong. Again, there is a kind of attitude, conduct, candor, and what have you that a human being will possess before Nigerians can follow him. One of the things that has been majorly our problem is that a few of the young people who have said they want to be president, say in the 2019 cycle, a great number of them have no experience. A great number of them were speaking highfalutin ideas and words that did not show anybody the sense that they know what they're even talking about. A great number of them don't even know how to form government. If you were to toss them into the villa tomorrow, they will struggle even to be able to balance things out. And some of them spoke so indecorously to everybody, forgetting that even if young people have the numbers, they still need to understand that we're not going to wish away all the older people or, not so young people to get away from the space. And unless the likes of SHOWUNMI, BANIRE, and a few people whose hearts are pounding for this country are able to come together and figure out a way around it, we're just going to have a lot of stars all over the place, and I can guarantee the system will keep frustrating us. It's frustrated him, I know that, and it is truly frustrating me. I have only signed up to an idea that democracy itself is not a pretty arrangement. It's a long journey, and we must continue to push it, and we must continue to drive it. But I tell you, some of those men who came in as young people many years ago, if I want to, without wanting to scapegoat any one of them, if you take the 1966, 1963 class, they sat down and they've sat down for too long. Even if you take the 1992, the Bola Tinubu and Co. and Atiku class, they themselves, with the exception of a few of them, have not really understood that they didn't play the role of succession planning effectively. Why? Because they have interpreted the power they got to be similar to having a toy that they play with and only allow any of their so-called friends and loyalists to play with. And then when you look at the people they parade as loyalists, you want to cry. You want to cry. MUIZ BANIRE is not in the Senate. You are not pushing MUIZ BANIRE to be a governor. You are pushing the kinds of people you have been pushing. And you ask yourself, did you not see a BANIRE there? Have they not seen a SHOWUNMI there? But here we are. They think we're too opinionated. And the only opinion we have is there must be a way we can do things to make it better for all of us. And if your voice is too loud, if your English is too much for them, you will just be shouting while they'll be promoting mediocres and be sending them to go and leave the country. And our own jeopardy is that, unfortunately, some of us are so sold to this country, we are incapable of just letting them go. So we constantly look for new ideas, new ways, new narrative, things to encourage them and push them. We tell them, look, you have taken all the money you need. What more do you need? Why don't you let us commit ourselves to the great ideals of those who built the foundations of other strong democracies and other strong economies in the world? But here we are. And it has hit us now in the face. There's none of them that can proudly tell you he even knows how to navigate 2023 now. Why? Young people are very, very agitated. The tribes are at war with each other. We have the highest level of IDP people for people that are not in a real war. And here we are now. There's hardly any zone of the country that can say, oh, we have our hands on managing security. Guess what makes it worse? What makes it worse now is that non-state actors are now beginning to take the space and order and make all sort of pronouncements that you need to ask yourself, is this not the Nigeria of our dream? Did we not grow up here? Did we not see our fathers here? You watch them wear Awolowo's cap. Their head is totally empty. You see them call themselves Sadana people, and you are wondering what's going on with these people. Look at the Southeast. These are the people of Nnamdi Azikiwe, who are the F country and the temerity to be thinking of a Pan-African movement. Look at the characters that are leading us now. That is where we are. So I do not know, and I don't have any solution to how we're going to get away with it, because they're not going to lie down.
No doubt we'll be talking about solutions, in the days ahead. I'm afraid, gentlemen, I'm just looking at my producers just giving me some of the messages and comments coming from across the continent, from Kenya, Ghana, Uganda, and of course here in Nigeria. People listening to both of you, they think that what both of you are saying resonates with the entire continent, and that is why I'm hoping that we'll find some other time MUIZ BANIRE and SHOWUNMI to come back and talk pretty much more, especially look at the continent and talk more about leadership and leadership recruitment process for the continent, because what looks like years away is thinning out today as the hours roll. Nigerians and Africans have a big task of choosing the best candidate to reposition their country for greatness. The road to that moment starts from now, and it begins with everyone. So I'd like to say many thanks again to SEGUN, SHOWUNMI, and of course MUIZ BANIRE for your time. And to you all from across the continent, many thanks for your messages and for watching. I'm Sulaiman. See you again.